I'm a local loan officer in West Palm Beach, Florida. I've been in the mortgage industry for the last 8 years. I've worked in the industry throughout the country. I've closed over 1,000 loans during my career, so I've seen it all. I'm on a mission to make mortgages both entertaining and educational. Welcome to Lending with Leah. This is the podcast for anyone thinking of potentially owning, in the process of buying, or already owns their own home. I always have to put that sound effect in there for anyone who's listening because you can't see. There's like this fun little board over here with these sounds, and it's just kind of fun to play around with. And this show is magical because mortgages are magical. So we make magical sounds. I'm Leah Budding, licensed mortgage loan officer, and I'm your host. And today we have another guest on with us. So everyone, this is Thais Purdy, and she is the owner of Purdy Law.
Thanks for having me, Leah.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
And today, what we're really going to get into is we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of self-employment and how that impacts your mortgage process. So one, it's already a pretty big deal to just step out on your own, take that leap from, working for someone to working for yourself. And then on top of that, when you go to buy a home, the rules unfortunately, they're quite a bit different. And so if you don't know or don't adequately prepare yourself, you could cause some hurdles in a loan or home buying process. And so we're here to talk on that. But before we get into that nitty gritty piece of things, Thais, you just went through the mortgage process yourself. Mm-hmm. And we definitely want to hear on that. But before we get to that piece as well, I want everyone to just get to know a little bit more about you and your process to becoming an entrepreneur and what you do and what makes you tick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm the managing attorney at Purdy Law. It's an immigration law firm. And I've been on my own now for 2 years, which is what allowed me to go through the home buying process with Leah. And so before that, I was working in private practice with another law firm. And what really pushed me to going out on my own and doing my own thing and starting my solo career with Purdy Law, it was COVID.
Really?
Yeah, it was COVID. So it was around October, November of 2020. And one day my boss was just like, hey, things are looking really rough. And I don't think I'm going to have money to pay you. And that was frightening. So, at that point, we're like kind of at the height of the pandemic. Nobody really knows what's going on. Masks, mandates, curfews, all this stuff is happening. And not a lot of people were hiring immigration attorneys at that point. So I figured,
because there wasn't much immigration or travel,
exactly.
Period,
it
anywhere.
All came to a halt. And so at that point, I was like, well, I have two options. I can either, send out resumes and see if anything sticks, or I can try to do this thing on my own. So I went with the latter and never looked back. It was the best decision I've ever made. I'm so happy that I became financially independent and created my own nest, if you will. And it's been obviously ups and downs for sure, roller coaster ride, because there's some things they don't teach you in law school, and one of them is being a business owner. And so that's been definitely a whirlwind, but also just incredibly rewarding, satisfying. And I think that things have a way of kind of falling into place. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely what happened for me. So eternally grateful for everything, all the lights that pointed me in this direction that I am in today.
I love it. And I have a question for you, and it's not one that I thought of before. So sorry to put you on the spot. But I've done a couple episodes where we talk specifically about fear and fear in the home buying process. But I'm curious, did you have any fears when you decided to step out on your own to be an entrepreneur? Was there anything that scared you? And then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was scared shitless. I would tell you, yeah. I mean, I think there's some attorneys who have this vision that, eventually they want to go out on their own. I mean, there's law students that as soon as they graduate past the bar, they go ahead and they hang a shingle and they call it a day and they just start going and, doing their own stuff. But that was never my goal. I never had this desire to go solo, to be out on my own. I tend to be a very dependent person in this world of ours. And so, I've always been the person that I need to have somebody else there that's kind of holding my hand and telling me it's okay. And, so yes, I was very scared. But I think that, first of all, having a strong support system around you is very important. And luckily I had that in my family and the people around me, my friends. I have a very strong group of people that kind of just rallied around me and cheered me along the way. And they're like, no, you can do this. You can do this. There's other people who do it. You can do it too. It's going to be okay. And the biggest fear I had above all of anything else was just the financial part of it, right? Because for me, it was something that was unexpected. I wasn't really planning for it or preparing for it. And so, at the last minute, I just had to kind of do it. And my biggest fear was well, what if I can't pay my bills? Money has to keep coming in somehow. So I think that for anybody, I would say the golden rule, right, is make sure you have 6 months of savings or whatever. I didn't have that. So it was definitely either this works or it doesn't. But in the back of my head, it was okay, well, if this doesn't work, then I'll just apply for jobs, right? What's the worst that can happen at this point? I already got laid off.
Exactly. What more could really...
Right. So, I had a little bit of money, definitely not 6 months, but I figured, I'd give myself, the ability to at least give it a shot. I mean, if you're going to take a shot on somebody, it should be yourself, I think.
I think so too.
And that's what I did. So, yeah.
I love that. I had some similar advice that was given to me when I first became a loan officer, where, granted, I'm not fully on my own. I am W-2, but I'm 100% commission. So it's very similar to kind of running your own business, being on your own. And I remember I went from a loan officer that was sitting in a real estate office. So not that you don't have to work for those relationships and you're not there hustling, but you do have a little bit of a leg in the door that you don't if you're a solo loan officer by yourself. And I remember when I went solo, or had the opportunity to go solo and get out of the real estate office, and I was so terrified. I probably thought about it for about a month. And my dad finally called me and he goes, sweetie, he's like, I'm going to put it to you this way. He goes, do you believe in yourself? And I said, of course I do. And he's like, then there's your answer. He's like, if you believe in yourself, go. And he's like, if you don't believe in yourself, he's like, then stay, because you're right where you want it. You're right where you should be if you don't believe in yourself.
That. Look at that. That's great advice. Because it's true, right? You have to believe in yourself. And like I said, give yourself the shot, right? And if not, then nobody else is going to give you the shot. So you have to kind of make your own paths, I guess, right?
Yeah, just kind of create the opportunity for yourself. I mean, I think opportunity is one of those things where sometimes we get lucky and it just comes around and it swings by and you're like, ooh, look at that. I'm going to get on that. And other times I feel like we have to create our own opportunities too.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's what I did. And that's how I got here in this room with you. So I love it.
Well, and I want to know too. And, I want everyone else to know as well. But what kind of law do you specialize in? And tell everyone a little bit about, because law is such a big field. There's so much in it. So, what do you do? What's your specialty? What do you love the most about, the type of law you practice?
Yeah. So I do immigration 100%. That's what my law firm is based around. What I love the most is just helping people, and the United States is such a melting pot of culture, and it's such an honor and a privilege that I get to play a small part in just helping people build the life that they've dreamed for themselves in America, and getting to help people call our home their home is just extremely rewarding for me. Yeah.
Give me an example of one really successful story or moment you had with one of your clients.
I mean, there's so many, but I actually got one today, but I'm not going to talk about them because it's not as good as the other one. I think that whenever there's people come to you after they've been denied, and then you're able to refile or analyze their reasons for denial, and then refile their case, and then you get a win. That's so rewarding. So that's what happened today.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Wait. I think there's.
But I think that the most rewarding case I've had so far was right when I first started. I had a client who had been here for, oh my gosh, over 20 years. He was still out of status, didn't have a green card. And I did a little digging, and I found out he was eligible for 245I, which is this old law that basically, if you're grandfathered in, it forgives a lot of things. So working without authorization, forgives any period of time that you've been here out of status, which for him was a very long time. And with that, we were able to do an employment-based green card for him. And so it was really exciting. So the day that he finally got his green card, not just him, his wife, he had a son. It was a beautiful moment. I mean, this man, this grown man in his mid 50s was just in complete tears. His wife was crying. There's tears all around. So moments like that are what I live for.
We love the happy tears.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think, I don't think there was tears per se, but I would like to think there's happy tears when you just went through your own.
Oh, 100%. Oh my gosh, Leah, I love my house. When you told me to come here, I was like, oh, I gotta leave? Oh, man.
I don't want to leave my
house. Yeah, no, there was definitely just moments of just I think I looked at Kelly. So Kelly's my wife. After we closed, and we were finally in our new house for the first time, and we're just this moments of just complete is this real? Aww. Is this for real? Because this was always such a big goal that we had for our family, and we've been working towards it for so long, So to finally be in this place where we it's just a beautiful neighborhood, and it's a beautiful house, and you saw it yourself. It's got a beautiful view and a pool.
And
just having this space where we can just envision our son growing up and riding his bike down the street, and it's just such warm, fuzzy feelings all around. So there was definitely tears of joy for sure.
Well, and I have to ask, because I remember one of the things you said when I asked about your son. I'm like, oh, is he excited? And you're like, well, his toys just keep disappearing. And that, is he excited now? Does he understand? Did he get his toys back?
So we are still in the process of moving, right? Because as you know, we had to sell our old house to then buy our new house. So we had a storage unit that we got just for Emerson's toys. So that we could clear out the clutter in our old house, because otherwise it was oh my gosh, there's stuff everywhere. So he's slowly gotten toys back, but my family keeps bringing over toys for him. So there's just toys everywhere. But yes, he's excited. He's running around. There's choo-choo trains everywhere and monster trucks and oh my gosh, the kid's having a blast.
That's like me. I'm the cool aunt. So my best friend Alexa, when I go to visit her kids, I'm what's the loudest funnest, most annoying toy I could buy this child because I don't have to take it back with me. I get to just leave it there. And I'm like, and the kid loves me. And she's like, yeah, why'd you do that? But in the end,
it's great. We appreciate it. I mean, it's great. But now we keep thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, we got to get the toys out of that storage unit ASAP before they hit us with another fee for next month. So,
yeah, because those storage units are not cheap either.
No, and we got an air conditioned one, so whatever. So we gotta be out of there by like December 15th at this point because we already missed the November deadline. It's fine.
It's life, right? It's okay.
It's life.
Okay, and I want to now kind of segue into a little bit the not as fun probably part of the mortgage process and just when you are self-employed and what that looks like. So I'm going to break out for everyone listening. We're going to break out 4 main parts to self-employment. And then Thais says, as we're talking and I'm throwing stuff in there, feel free to throw in anything from your own experience as well, any tips that you can give people. So the first point is I'm going to talk on length of self-employment. So in almost every case, it's going to be 2 years. And that's pretty much irregardless of what type of loan you're doing, whether that's your traditional, conventional FHA, VA, USDA, or even if you get into what we call the non-QM or the non-qualified mortgage realm. Basically, I describe that as a realm of mortgages they're not backed by the government, like your conventional FHA loans, but they're not hard money either. So it's kind of this in-between world. And even for a lot of those loan products, it's still going to be, or they're still going to require a 2-year period. Except, and this was one thing we did, we didn't end up doing it, but we did look into it for your situation. There is one exception, and that is FHA. And FHA will allow between 12 to 24 months of self-employment if you were previously employed in the same line of work in which you are self-employed for at least 2 consecutive years.
Right. And this is one of the things I'm going to add to this that, Google is great. It provides a wealth of knowledge. But just this is also why it's so important to be working with professionals who know what they're doing, right? And actually know the statutes and the law and can really properly advise you because, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do my thing because there's got to be an exception to the exception of the rule, right? This is what I like. As an attorney, this is what we look for. We look for the exception in everything. So after I had spoken with Leah and she's like, no, Thais, you have to wait for 2 years. And that's coming up so soon. So we might as well just wait. I go into Google. I'm like, I think Leah forgot something. I think that there is something in here that she must have missed.
The lawyer in you.
I was like, no, there's got to be. And then I'm like, aha, I knew it. There is an exception to the exception of the rule. So I called Leah and I was like, Leah, did you forget about the exception to the exception of the exception? And Leah, in her and this is just like the professionalism and just sweetness in her. So I think what you mean is but really, and then she goes on this whole I don't know, a 5-minute explanation of what the rule is, where it came from, where it originated, and why I'm not eligible for the exception to the exception. But
so this exception to the exception that we're talking about, it's not the FHA one, because that one you did actually qualify for on that one. It just, in your case, it was better for us to wait like an extra month and a half and do conventional. But so what you were referring to the exception is conventional, specifically Fannie Mae has in their guidelines for length of self-employment. They do have something in there that's like, oh, if you're between 12 and 24 months and you can prove that you make the same, if not more money than other self-employed professions in your same profession.
Yeah,
in
similar
the same
situated professionals in the industry. Something
yeah,
like that.
in the industry, in your area. And so when we started kind of talking about, well, it's there, but
as a lawyer in a law firm, like how do you it's impossible. Like it's so varying, like the degrees of like income from, especially in immigration. I mean, I don't know about other laws, areas of law. I can't speak for them, but I know for a fact that in immigration, it's just so, I mean, it's so wide, so impossible.
Yeah, hard to do. I think now the FHA one is definitely a doable one. I've done a couple loans for people with that exception. But the conventional one, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a feel-good thing that they just throw in there to make people think like, oh, look, there is an exception. But like, look at all this next to impossible stuff you got to overcome to potentially get it. But, you know, going back to it, 2 years, you know, really to be safe, you want to have 2 full years of self-employment, preferably 2 years of tax returns as well. And that kind of segues into my next main point with self-employment, which is how is your income calculated? Because it's calculated quite differently than if you're W-2. So when you have a W-2 job, you're employed by someone, you get to use your gross income, your income before taxes. So if you make a gross salary of $10,000 a month, you get to use $10,000 a month for qualifying. Even though you are not bringing home $10,000, you still get to use it. When you are self-employed, you don't get to do that. You don't get to use...
I think we need one of these little... Here you go.
Maybe the sad one, too. And it's awful, and don't shoot the messenger. I hate telling people this news because I don't think it's fair, personally. You know, I think if you're W-2 and you get to use your gross income, I feel like you should be able to do the same when you're self-employed, but you don't. You know, so your income is going to be more so calculated based off of your net income after your write-offs. And I think we all kind of know, you know, as when you are self-employed, that's one of the benefits is being able to write things off that you don't get to do when you're W-2. You know, but it kind of sucks because there's almost like a penalty for that when you're going to buy a home. Now, there are a couple things that you can add back. You know, I say this too with a grain of salt. Always have your loan officer actually do your income calculation for you so you know, don't guess. But things like depletion, depreciation, and if you file a Schedule C with your self-employment, miles traveled are actually things you can add back. You know, so though there are a couple write-offs out there that you can add back as qualifying income, but it's not going to be a lot, unfortunately. And the next point, main point number 3, is documents you'll need. And I know
this is a fun one.
This is a fun one. All the documents. So 2 years of tax returns, personal and business, depending on how you file your taxes. You know, some people that are self-employed just have a Schedule C. A Schedule C is going to just be on your personal returns. And then some people have personal and business returns. And I always say all pages and schedules. That means if your tax returns are like over 100 pages, we still need all 100 pages.
And this is like an important point to make too. Like you have to be organized, right? Because I think that's half the battle. Know where your stuff is, and it's going to make the process so much easier for you, because when you're working on your own, you're an entrepreneur, you're solo, whatever your situation is, you have so many different hats that you wear. But I think one of the major ones that you must have is organization, at least with the financial documents for your business. Not just because like if you're trying to buy a home, but with anything, right? Like the last thing you want is the IRS knocking on your door asking to audit your your stuff and you're like, oh, I think it's under the dog bed. I don't know. Like, right?
You want to just be able to be like, here you go.
Exactly.
Here it is. I'm good. I know what I'm doing.
Yep.
I agree. Some other things that might be applicable, maybe not, is K-1s if you are filing separate business returns and you have K-1s. Also, if you pay yourself a W-2, because sometimes when you're self-employed, you will actually pay yourself a W-2. And you can use that as income, So if you have those are things you're going to want to send over. And another big one that you did a great job on, Thais, is profit and loss statements. Mm-hmm. So when you're getting a mortgage, usually if you pass the first quarter of the year, so let's say we get into 23, come April 1st, most of the time an underwriter is going to require a profit and loss statement. Now, if you're doing better than you were the previous year, you don't get to use that as income. It's just there to tell the underwriter like, oh, okay, you're making the same or more than you were before. But if your profit and loss for that quarter or whatever part of the year you're in is less than what you earned last year, that it does have the potential to actually kill your whole loan, depending on what the loss looks like. Mm-hmm. So you did such a great job of having, like, when I brought up profit and loss, and you're like, oh, yeah, my accountant's already got the information and we're ready to go. Yep. And it was so easy, and we could just get that verified, pretty much right up front for you.
Yeah, that goes back to that point I made in the beginning. Like, have somebody who's managing your books monthly if you can do it. It's an expense, but it's one that is going to pay for itself. Just having the peace of mind that your finances are in order, that the business is healthy or not, so that you're aware of the financial viability of your baby, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it would be I definitely don't do that right? Like, I could not, thank you for the credit, Leah, but obviously, I did not do that. So yeah, just make sure you have professionals working with you and on your business that you trust and who know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And the fourth and final main point when it comes to self-employment is that if your traditional mortgages don't work, conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, there are other options out there for you. So I did talk a little bit earlier this episode on non-QM loans, what those are. Again, non-qualified mortgage, kind of an in-between world between government regulated and hard money. But there are loans out there, like the two that come to mind specifically for self-employment is going to be one, bank statement loans, which is if you do have a lot of write-offs on your taxes, bank statement loan will actually allow you to use usually 12 to 24 months of your business bank statements to do your income calculation. So sometimes that'll get you more qualifying income. Same with there are 1099 loans out there. So this is great for any of our contract workers who are self-employed and they're 1099, is this type of loan actually allows you to use your 1099 for an income calculation versus using your tax returns. So, think of that too. Something with those types of loans is they do tend to have a little bit higher interest rates and usually a little bit higher fees. But the trade-off sometimes is that you can get your home, whereas with a traditional mortgage, you wouldn't be able to. So luckily we didn't have to do that in your case. But that is an option that's out there. I've seen people where they'll do like a bank statement loan, and then we work together for a couple years on, how they might have to change or do their business or run their business differently to maybe in a couple years qualify for a conventional mortgage. And you can do a refinance and just hopefully get a lower interest rate and things like that. So there's plenty of options out there if you're self-employed. At the end of the day, really just talk to your loan officer, get your documents in so they can tell you exactly where you stand, and you just take it one step at a time from there. And that concludes our episode today. So, I say it in every episode, but you guys can find me on all the platforms, all the platforms Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at Lending with Leah. So that's where you can find me. And Thais, where can everyone find you?
At Purdy Law.
I did, before this, I did go on your website. I was like snooping a little bit, and you actually have a very nice, like well put together.
Right? I also did not do that myself, but thank you for the credit.
Again, this is why it's important to have professionals helping
really
you
good.
out.
What I tell people is I'm really good at hiring people to do stuff that I have no clue how to do. So that's another one right there.
Yeah. And that's it, even like with this podcast. So I just show up at Kana House Studios here in Wellington, Florida, puts on everything for us, edits everything. I couldn't do it without them. So big shout out to them as well. And as always, if anyone has specific mortgage questions and you want to talk through a scenario, find me at Lending with Leah. My contact information is there. Give me a call and I'd be happy to discuss your situation. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.